All right, hello everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Oracles of Theleston, episode 5. We are talking about Tide's End today, the port along Greyshore Sound, and it's definitely an interesting place. Most of the information is kind of from the Fireside 23 that happened a couple of weeks ago, and if you folks remember, it was 2 weeks between. They didn't do 22 3 weeks ago. There was a little break that week, so this was a lot of information. They started off with a lot of updates too. There's definitely some stuff in the works. By the way, folks, if you know awesome artists that do commissions and work for cheap, or want to try to work some deal out or whatever, definitely pass them along to the Skyward Star team, because there's a good chance that there could be some business to be had there. As they said in the show, they've got 84 original pieces of art. That's a hell of a lot to commission. So, yeah, and a lot of interesting stuff's been coming up along the way. What's in production, what's going on, and I'll actually share with you folks my notes here from that talk in case you wanted to go over it during the show or look at it afterward. I just dropped it in chat there. I'll have to remember to add it to the video afterward. So yeah, we've got Diggs here, we've got Polaris here. How are you two doing? Hope you folks have had a good past couple of weeks here.
I'm great. I'm having fun in No Man's Sky still, and finally started editing my story piece, so I might have that up by the end of the weekend. I'm learning stuff in Blender, how to do video editing in Blender of all things, which is not a lot of fun. But what else was I gonna say that's happened since we saw everyone last? I forget, but No Man's Sky's taken up a lot of my I did a subcast with Cobra TV, so we talked about No Man's Sky for about an hour and a half.
Cool.
And of course I loved No Man's Sky, so we could have gone for a couple of more weeks, but we cut it off at an hour and a half.
Cool. Well, I'm sorry I missed the last time. I was out of town. I was actually on the way home during the live stream 2 weeks ago. Sorry I missed that. I missed you all, thought of you. Mostly just been busy and doing real life stuff, and trying to catch up with all the pieces and parts of the projects that I've signed up for Theleston, and trying to orient on priorities for getting stuff done.
Gotcha. Definitely good things to be working on. So, Tide's End. Tide's End's an interesting place. We learned a lot about it. It seems like it's one of the longest establishments on Greyshore, and as they were saying, it's been there for a while. The current one is built on the remains of the previous Tide's End, or whatever it had been called before Tide's End, perhaps. And what's kind of cool about it is it's actually never been unoccupied at any time. It's gone down to as low as a few people in the worst of times, but it never has been abandoned. It has been the longest consistently running establishment on all of Greyshore.
So let's frame, though, because Tide's End does it comprise Crown's Rock and Valor, or are they just the nearest?
Nope, those are actually the nearest ports, and those are actually, I would say, much larger places than Tide's End.
Is it the Greyshore archipelago?
It's kind of the southern end. There's kind of a bowl shape that forms in the middle of the coastline there, and that bowl is basically where the river from the mountains from Falkirk is coming down. So the fresh water's coming down from there. They also get a lot of lumber and stuff from there. So they've got their source of fresh water as well. They've got the what they call it, a midden, kind of down under the water. So the water, when the tide rises in this kind of bowl-shaped harbor, it will kind of flow in there and flush all the crap and stuff out. So they have their own sanitation sort of system coming from that. That's pretty cool. But the way it's formed is there's kind of it's. I actually would need to see a map to really know.
Yeah, but
because
just...
there's.
Well,
Go ahead.
when Snipe was describing it, he actually was like drawing it with his arms.
Yeah, a little bit.
So like Anakata, the whole continent or whatever piece you want to call that of Anakata is to the north, forming the northern section of the bowl.
Yep.
And then Greyshore
Greyshore
Sound and Blackwell Sound is actually the water separating Anakata from Greyshore. And Greyshore is all those towns along the southern part of the map of the known world right now.
Okay.
Oh, Tide's End
so-
is bigger than Crown's Rock.
Yeah, he did say Tide's End is actually bigger than Crown's Rock, but a lot of that is because of sprawl and
That's true.
farms. They have kick-ass farms.
That's true, because they've got all that fresh water from the river and a lot of nice forest, so good stuff for it. I guess Crown's Rock feels denser in general, and that's I guess why it kind of
Yes.
feels bigger. Maybe I don't know which one has a higher population just in general. I guess it's hard to say because the population of Tide's End, that may also include all the merchants and navy that are out on the seas in their area that are likely to dock there and have a lot of business there, and fishers as well.
And of course, we've got that Flotillas city itself that's somewhere around there, right? That would have been created by players in Revival. So Tide's End is part of Anakata, or it's part of Greyshore?
It's part of Greyshore.
Right, it's part of Greyshore. And then...
and it's in the kind of the nasty part of the Sound. I believe it's between Crown's Rock and Valor. So if you're one of those hardy crews that's trying to sail across with the deep water and the shoals and all the nasty random places, you'll definitely, if you're having a hard time getting through, if I'm not mistaken, Tide's End is a place that you would end up stopping to resupply, repair, etc. Or likewise, the Navy from Tide's End might be the people that help steer you out of danger and get you from point A to point B.
Okay.
So it's definitely a major point, especially because if Valor and Crown's Rock are the two main ways to get to Anakatha, then having this as kind of the intermediary between the two, there's definitely a lot of interesting trade opportunities that can happen there. A lot of exchange of a lot of culture, and hopefully not too much disease, but I'm sure that gets passed around there too. Considering the Dirty Quarter is the name of the Sailors' Inn, I mean, that's kind of paints a pretty picture there.
Well, and it rains a lot.
Oh yes, it does rain a lot. So I mean, they've got seawater, they've got the fresh river water, they've got rainwater, they've got a lot of different sources of water. If water is something that your character has any concern with or interest in, it'd probably be a very interesting place to live. Like an alchemist, I could see, that really specializes in using different waters, or even a brewer.
An herbalist.
An herbalist.
I would imagine there's all kinds of growing things there.
Yep. So that's some of the interesting stuff about it, just in terms of the where it's at and the influence of it. And of course, because you wouldn't really just like travel across land to get to Falkirk. It doesn't really seem like a very easy place to get to unless you're coming from Tide's End, because then you're just going up the mountain, along the river. And that entire area, I'm sure, is very well built up. As they were saying, there's a coalition between the loggers and the logging mill itself, at which is a little up. It's not in Tide's End. It's just a little up from it. That they, instead of it being an individualist, like I cut my logs, send them down the river and get paid sort of thing, it's we all cut logs, we send them down the river, they cut them, we all work together, we all know what the hell's going on, and I'm sure they've got, you know, great roads and paths and you know, infrastructure set up to get from point A to point B. So coming from any other place to try to get to Falkirk, probably not so good. Coming from Tide's End, it's set. It's a good way to go. So that's definitely another sort of feature of it, is that you've got this nice mountain logging village just, you know, up on a mountain nearby. And oh yeah, it's the same river where you're getting all your water from, is where they're floating the logs down. So anything involving, you know, lumber and woodworking and stuff, there's going to be a lot of it in that area. And I would imagine there's a lot of woodworking going on, like you know, people carving things and making a lot of useful goods out of it. And of course, they even have a boyer in town. So if you want to get a bow, or I would imagine it's the same place you get to go to get a ballista built, you know, they've got the supplies for it. Speaking of ballistas, that was the thing. Verde incorrectly used the word cannon. No, there's not cannons, but there are a lot of weapons that are in the area. Now, they said that it's not, in their words, it's not the most thunderous navy. They don't have these, like, 100 cannon gunboats, but it is the biggest and most widespread navy of anybody that comes from Tide's End there. And they work in lockstep with the guard. It sounds like that, you know, one's not going to try to usurp control over the other because they realize, you know, A, their families live there and that kind of suck, and B, it's not going to end well anyway. So in this era of high, like, collaboration and participation, you know, it seems like they're constantly working together. But just in case, there's a lot of guns out at sea. There's a lot of the ballistas, catapults, and trebuchet, but there's way more weapons set up in Tide's End facing outward, and I don't know if they're doing this just for pirates, if there was some other credible, large, otherworldly sea threat that they may have faced at some point, and that's why they've got all those weapons. Well,
they faced a lot of threats.
Yeah, I'm not sure if, like,
before the Dark Ages, so...
one of the outer gods sent its influence in the area, and that's something that they may be paranoid about. Instead of, you know, yeah, pirates are a general threat, but, you know, they have a lot of damn weapons firing outward, it sounds like.
That part was interesting. More weapons facing outward than there are on all the ships facing Tide's End.
Yep.
So, according to the map, it looks like Crown's Rock is part of Greyshore, kind of like Long Island.
It's part of the Sound. It's part of that whole
I thought
area.
you were asking if it was part of Tide's End. No. Yeah, no, it's definitely more on the Greyshore side of things. I guess in terms of what the Synod would see as, like, kind of the governance and things, probably would be seen as more part of Greyshore, just because if you're going to have a problem, if there's some issue going on, who's Crown's Rock going to call for help? Are they going to call Sandspit, or are they going to call, you know, Valor?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think of those as being like cities that are connected, or not. I don't mean physically connected, but I mean related. They're all related. Valor, Tide's End, Crown's Rock, Owensport.
Is it Valor or Valor?
Valor.
Valor. Okay.
They're pronouncing it Valor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Neuro, could you put a link for the map out there?
Oh, sure. Hey, everybody.
Just so that everybody can see it. Been a while.
There you go, folks. All right. So yeah,
should
with
qualify
the
that
map,
that's a player-made map.
Yeah.
Credit to Eversource for that. But it's a player-made map that Omwa pretty much blessed as saying that's pretty close.
Yeah.
We can at least use it until we get a map, until we get our hot little hands on Omwa's map that he's making. This is what we have.
Gotcha.
So you can see where it says Greyshore, kind of lower part, slightly left of center. Greyshore is the name of that whole area. Like Anakata is the name of the area on the northern piece.
Mm-hmm.
And the sound is the water in between them. Snipe was talking about that in the stream as well.
Yeah.
So Crowns Rock, Valor, Tide's End, Falkirk, they're all part of Greyshore.
So which one's the Greyshore sound and which one's the Blackwell sound? Because I see most of it looks like Blackwell sound, but they had mentioned Greyshore sound as well. Or are they interchangeable names for the same thing?
That's a good question for the devs.
Because that now that I'm
I thought
looking
they
at
were
this,
interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean it could also be that Crowns Rock and what was that Blackwell Harbor or whatever the one below it there. It could be that they're actually a little further out, and that Greyshore Sound is the one that's kind of between them, and Blackwell Sound is more between them and Anakotha. Let's see. Two big islands in the sound between Anakotha and Greyshore, the Blackwell Archipelago. Okay. So I guess it is actually the Blackwell Sound. But those that live there use both. Gotcha. Thanks, Omwa. Appreciate it. Cool. Good stuff. Yeah, Eversource. This is definitely a good map. And you see the river's head there. You see that river, and there's the little lake there. That's the river that the logging is going down. You can see that's not like a 2-day walk or something. That's a long journey. So, if you're trying to come in from Bulwark, Freeport through Sky Pass, that doesn't sound fun. If you're going from Fall Shallow in the lower left there, I don't know. I don't know how treacherous. I don't know how much, how well traveled that is. It seems like it's a lot of dense forest in between. But you can see along the river there, just goes straight to Tide's End. I would imagine, those roads, those paths are pretty well built, pretty well patrolled, constantly used. And I would imagine depending on their involvement with it, if Dunwich and Innsmouth have a lot of influence with that, they'll probably deploy some of their junior ranger forester people to patrol those paths as their kind of rite of initiation or whatever. It's if you can do this and not screw things up and not prove yourself to be a bandit or whatever, then maybe we'll start to give you the responsibility of being on some of the surveying expeditions that you'll get some of the commission from. So, I could definitely see that being a part of it. But other than that, I don't know. I would imagine Marifar probably has a lot of vested interest in that being maintained as well, being the major outfitter in the areas. All of that wood, that makes a lot of useful practical things. I would imagine they also want to make sure. So not only is there that coalition between Tide's End and Fall Creek and their loggers, I would imagine there's, from the business influences in the area, additional security and protection and stuff dedicated to making sure those logs keep coming down Cloudspire Mountain through the river to Tide's End.
I think one of the things that's not on the map, because of mostly scale, but I think I would be fascinated to see what Eversource would do if he knew about the bridge. Find the bridge fascinating. I actually, based on this fireside chat, had to go out and Google images for the Tower Bridge and the London Bridge to see make sure that I understood what they were talking about in terms of a 2-story promenade style of bridge.
Yeah.
That is huge. That's a huge Hummer.
Oh, yeah.
And
so
where does the bridge span?
I don't know what the bridge spans. I'm guessing it spans the river because, What is there?
Yeah,
You know, I mean, it's right there on the bowl of the harbor. So I'm guessing the bridge is across what must be a huge river.
Yeah, the bridge is across the river coming from Fall Creek, so it's
Right.
Okay.
But it sounds huge. I mean, there's a bar on top.
It's gigantic. No, that's I actually remember when my friends were in Japan, there was this gigantic market district sort of thing that was all on top of a major bridge. It was just this massive bridge that was built up, and apparently you could get silk kimonos. You come, one day, you get measured, you come back like 2 days later, and it's there waiting for you at like a really, really reasonable price. So if I ever go to Japan, I got to look that up. But
okay, so Umba is saying it's over the river at the back end of the city.
Yeah, that would make sense.
It just sounds so cool. Like I want to go hang out on the bridge.
And that was the what was the name of that? The Sanguine Hearth, was that the one on that bridge? Because there were two inns they mentioned. I figured that was the one because the other one was the Dirty Quarter. And
yep, no, that's the name of the the bridge on the bar. I mean the bar on the bridge.
Bar on the bridge, bridge on the bar.
And
a really big bar.
Marofar owns that.
Yeah. So that's an interesting sort of thing. I'm sure they get a lot of their influence in the area from having that, being able to host major people coming through the area, hosting events, and other sorts of things. Because it seems like it's a very iconic sort of thing. It's an inn/tavern on a bridge over a river in a dock town, and I would imagine it's further up because it's where the mouth of the river is kind of hitting the water there. I would imagine it's going to be further up. I'm not sure if it's all the way towards the top of the rim where you're above the fog. If it is, that's definitely in that high luxury stuff. They were saying the bottom 2/3 of the harbor fills up with fog, but the top third, you have a nice beautiful view over the top of it, and that's where the rich people live, and that's where the like a lot of the churches and temples and that sort of stuff are dedicated.
It does sound very upscale.
Yeah, so it seems like, I would imagine if the bridge is built high enough up, far enough back, that it's up in the higher parts rather than down in the bowl. It's kind of like the iconic, come to Tide's End, visit the Sanguine Hearth, drink the so-and-so, whatever their special drink is there, or whatever, and call it a vacation.
Yeah, for those of us who are lucky enough to privileged enough to have vacations. Paul, do you want to talk about the significance of something being owned by Marofar? You just dropped the name, but I don't know that everybody knows what Marofar is or why that would be.
Well, so I should preface this by saying that I'm actually really excited by the new fireside format. Like a lot of folks from Revival, I've missed the weekly blog, and so getting a fireside chat has been great. But getting a piece of that fireside or half of the fireside chat dedicated to a blog type of discussion is just awesome.
About
so
the lore,
we get to
specifically,
have 45 minutes dedicated to what is Tide's End. Produces an incredible amount of information in probably less time than it would take the devs, to write up a blog. And as long as we're over here taking notes, then we can kind of give that back. And that's just amazing to me. I love it. So having said that, we did get quite a bit of information about, for Revival folks, these names may be familiar. Dunwich and Innsmouth, which was the company from whom we purchased our Revival properties, and then Marofar, who were the outfitters from which we purchased the furnishings. This is where we bought our stuff on the Revival site. So if you're a property owner in Revival, these names should be at least vaguely familiar to you. And where D&I is the land speculator,
and
Marofar, lawyers, because they got to know that because of real estate. Marofar is the outfitter and supplier. So the two kind of go hand in glove, and yet they are competing also for resources. Marifar is actually based out of Sky Pass, but it has its largest warehouses in Tide's End, which is what we're talking about today, and Valor. I think the big takeaway that I got from the discussion about DNI and Marifar, and again, this segues back to all the discussions that we had about revival, was that if you wanted to be a cartographer in revival, chances are you went to Tide's End to study with a cartographer or a map maker in there, a DNI map maker. If you were an outfitter or wanted to be a commerce-based character, chances are you went to Tide's End to study with a Marifar person. And I'm going to guess that this is new. I mean, this is news to me, so I'm guessing that this is like news for everybody who was into character creation in Revival. And I think that's just really cool. Got me all excited.
Well, and of course, I'm having my my anti-authority reaction to that. Like, I'm sure there are cartographers who are pretty good that didn't have to have formal study, but you know.
Yes.
Important fact, though, Marifar is actually from Sky Pass. They're also established in Valor. So, if Marifar is actually what you really want to be working with, it seems like Sky Pass and Valor are just as viable of options as Tides End. However,
maybe more so, especially Valor.
Well, the thing is that Tides End has that kind of interesting, like, friendship/rivalry sort of thing that I'm sure they work with DNI on a lot of things. They rival DNI on a lot of things, but their land prospecting, there's overlap on the Venn diagram, but theirs is more like, where's the resources at? They're probably more looking along the sides of mountains and where natural resources may be, rather than DNI. They're not looking for stuff where you're collecting materials. They're looking for stuff where people are going to, buy houses or buy land to build their houses there. So they're looking for nicer areas, arable land, not too hard to get to, reasonably safe, not too bad with the bandits or the bears. That's the sort of stuff that they're looking for. And if there's any natural springs or anything like that, oh hell yeah, lay down a few stakes, and that's going to be some rich person's property. So that's kind of what they do. DNI is like, find an area, fence it off, and then sell parcels out of it. Versus Marifar, it's like, well, they might take over areas and then sell it over to DNI after they've got their resources out of it. There's a lot of logging and lumber to be gotten from a specific area. They might get what they want and then turn it over. I would imagine there are laws to prevent overlogging, so you probably can't completely clear cut an area unless it's actually going to be built up. So then they would clear cut the area that they've claimed and then sell it to DNI. It's like, all right, it's been cleared for building. Do your thing, guys. So there's a lot of that, and I would imagine if you're trying to be an outfitter, there's just so many opportunities there, because the DNI are very cutthroat. They don't provide their jackets and other regalia, things that signify your increase in rank. You have to buy those for yourself. So I'd imagine that's one of Marifar's businesses right there, is being the outfitter that sells all of the DNI equipment to the forester ranger people.
I can see that.
I would imagine they probably own the bowyer in town or have a major stake in it too. One or the other. Though that one might also be regulated by the Burger, because that's where the ballistas and catapults and stuff are being made.
Burger as in Burgermeister type.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So when we say Burger, it's not Burger. There's an H in there. It's a completely different. It's like a mayoral
It's the
magistrate
German word for mayor.
sort of thing.
So I have a couple of questions. One, somehow the way this is being presented, I'm realizing that I might end up being anti-Brog. You had mentioned in your notes being Brog washed, and
No, those were just some of the phrases that they were throwing around.
I know, but now that's what that's evoking in me is this whole concept of, you have to be a cartographer. Most likely you've been educated, where, that's a Brogian idea. I would imagine that you have to have formal education. But so that has me thinking, several things that we've talked about so far have me thinking that somehow Tide's End seems to be populated, I almost want to say, by nobles, but I don't think noble is and I'm comparing this to Crown's Rock, but I don't mean necessarily formal nobility. Part of what I'm saying is that there are these old families, and these are the types of families that would value high education and have wealth, but also would value these old family relationships, because it seems like the area is so old. And so it seems like, is there a downtown kind of area or a urban kind of area that's even more well off in some ways than most of Crown's Rock? I mean, we have that kind of central, is it Crown Hill area of Crown's Rock that, is the wealthiest area of Crown's Rock. But it sounds like Tide's End has an area that would have these old families that would be even more ostentatious than what we would typically find in Crown's Rock. What's your feeling there?
Yeah, I would imagine such. I would imagine it's one of those things where every generation that things go well, you move an extra tier up the bowl. If you're one of the older families, you've been there so long, you've had so many opportunities for success, you're likely towards the top, you're likely in the richer areas, or you've been able to get access to those areas but chose not to for one reason or another. Maybe you like to do your business in the middle to lower areas of town. I would imagine it's that kind of middle strata that's going to be the real interesting one. Towards the lower part, towards the harbor, I would imagine that's where a lot more of the sailors are living, a lot more of the fishers and anybody who would be involved with the docks and packing things and that sort of stuff. So then we already know that towards the top is where like the churches and the rich people and some of the higher commerce and stuff is at. But that area in between, as you're about, I would imagine, a third to 2/3 of the way up, I would imagine that's more the interesting, like, dense urban sort of areas. And with Tide's End, I have a hard time imagining, is it like really, really nice and well built and evenly spaced areas between buildings, and the buildings are built to a specific format, or it does that area, that urban stuff, almost look like a favela on the seaside or something? Is it everything built on top of everything else sort of situation?
Well, I think a couple of other questions that show up in that is how big is the middle class of Tide's End? Is that almost non-existent because you have the guys in the upper third and everybody else in the lower 2/3, or is there actually a substantial middle class that's somewhere in the middle? The other thing is that for convenience sake, towns tend to get built around convenience, the way that things actually happen. So it's like if you're a commerce baron, in Tide's End, are you at the top of the hill where it takes all damn day to go up and down and make your commute, back to the office and back? Or are you somewhere in the middle where that's not quite so bad, but you've managed to carve out a bunch of space for yourself in the middle of what could be urban sprawl. But Ombwa said something about there were also suburbs of Tide's End. So, maybe the suburbs were where the more nouveau riche hang out. I don't know. I think speculation, though, could go in several directions, because this is really the first we're hearing about Tide's End and the population and what they do there. But if everything is about commerce, because that's what Tide's End does, then I think even if you're in the first families of Tide's End, but you're not really interested in commerce, maybe your thing is something else, that's where the money's going to be.
Yeah. Now, with it being such a high commerce sort of thing, I would imagine D&I employees probably live towards the outer suburbs as well as the loggers. I don't think they really need to live in the middle of the city as much. Marifar, though, I'd imagine, because they're probably dealing with a lot of import and export, they probably do have a lot more of their employees in the lower to middle parts of the city.
Yeah.
So in terms of there being, a strong middle class in that region, I could definitely see it. Bad things happen, and people lose their homes and stuff happens, and maybe a wayward pirate fires a wayward catapult shot that happened to knock your house down and killed the moneymaker in your family, and you got screwed by that or whatever, and hard times ensued. But by and large, I would imagine most of the population is doing all right most of the time. Again, you've got your sewage taken care of, you've got your access to fish and food taken care of. There's a lot of forest around. You've probably got various mammals you can that are hunted and eaten in the outer suburbs and the farms, and probably even get some of that bear meat in the inns too. Other than that, because you got the fresh water and the rainwater, access to one of the key natural resources to live, especially in a coastal town where some coastal towns might not have those resources, it means it's just a lot easier to live there, and it takes a lot less resources and infrastructure for everybody to be sustained. So the amount everybody has to put out and the amount of effort everybody has to put out just to survive is a lot lower, so they can actually kind of grow and develop as kind of a nicer area. I almost wanted to title the episode the Jewel of the Greyshore Sound, because it kind of is. Like, Crowns Rock is it's basically Jersey City is there, say. You can really only get there by boat, and it's kind of a nasty place.
I kind of think of Valor as being pretty ostentatious too.
Yeah.
But
I think Valor was considered the jewel.
That's true.
But I think
It's also supposed to be very pretty.
Yeah, but I think Tide's End just has that sense of age.
Yeah, and it's older than Valor for sure.
Yeah,
sounds like it's older than Crowns Rock.
Yep.
Yeah, and they mentioned the Kynes, is that one of the prominent families?
First family,
there?
yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm really interested to see how that impacts society and the culture and what it means to have ancestors that are part of these first families or oldest families. And I'm thinking of there's something like that. It's really a big thing in as Mormons talk about their ancestral history. It's, these were the original pilgrims, and they keep their genealogy. It's very important to them. And we have the first pilgrims families in America itself. That's a big thing, especially in the South. We belong to these families that came over on the Mayflower. I'm interested to see how that impacts the culture there.
The devs are putting some interesting things in chat.
Tide's End gave up on trying to stay pretty a long time ago.
Yeah, it said Omba said Valor is pretty and wants to maintain the fine city mystique. And then Snipe said Valor is sort of like a Monaco in terms of presence, whereas Tide's End is more like an Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a very cool analogy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess between the two, I kind of imagine the streets are a little more dingy, and there's like a lot of seagull poop and stuff everywhere, and it's like doesn't get scraped clean as much as it is in Valor. But you know, if you don't look at the crap all over the streets, or I mean, well, that actually probably gets washed away a lot too. So you know, with the rain and everything, so man, probably not actually that bad. Probably that it just looks mostly like dull and gray and dreary a lot of the time, and no matter how brightly colored you want to make your paints and banners and that sort of stuff, it's just gonna kind of look like it's got a color desaturation filter over it whenever you're just doing things in that city. You know, and again, if you're in the foggy part while it's foggy, you're definitely feeling that all the time. Yeah, that's right. Rain in the midden, it does get washed.
And it sounds like Tide's End has more apothecaries.
Yeah, you know, that would make sense for sure.
It's like Amsterdam.
Well, yeah. Well, again, like I was saying earlier, you've got 3 different sources of water. I'm sure alchemists, herbalists, etc., can do a lot with that. Yeah, it's all muted in terms of the colors and stuff. But yeah, I guess at the same time, if that's what Valor's all about, they've probably got specific rules and laws about how the structures have to actually be built, and what materials are used and what motifs are used in order to maintain that really nice sort of look, or at least the stuff that's outward facing, that when you're, you know, actually coming to the city, it looks nice, and then maybe when you're in the city, there's some areas that don't look so great, but still have some like flash and, you know, niceness to them here and there. But yeah, I guess it's almost more of an industrial town at Tide's End, it seems like, you know, the industry and commerce and, you know, the farming and stuff, but very much more of a practical area. And, you know, sure, there's opportunities for tourism there, but it's probably more if there's like someone you actually want to visit or something. I don't think people are really going to go out of their way to go to the Sanguine Hearth to try the Sanguine Stout or whatever, and or whatever beverage they've got there. Just as a whim or whatever. It seems like if you're going to Tide's End, you've got business in Tide's End, and that's what they were saying earlier about like once a year people coming down with their logs or their wool or whatever, and while they're down from Fall Creek in the Tide's End area, that's when they would actually go to the Sanguine Hearth, because yeah, they're doing a bunch of trade right now. They've got enough coin to, you know, stay there for a night and, as they said, kind of rub elbows with the who's who of town.
Snipe does say that Tide's End would be a great place for an alchemist because there's plenty of materials and not as many restrictions to Sky Pass, and easier to fly under the radar than it is in a place like Valor.
I imagine there would be alchemists that have ships. They go out to sea and do their work out there.
Yeah, and I'm wondering about these lighthouses. They have two. They have an old one and a new one.
Yeah.
And the old one just evokes for me Tales of Cthulhu. I'm wondering again, like if I'm thinking of Lovecraft stories, then I'm thinking about deep ones and what might some ties to families that might have some kind of interesting blood in their history. And what kind of old tales might revolve, especially around the old lighthouse, as opposed to the new one.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of the, you know, because it's been there for so long and might have been there since before this iteration of Tide's End. It's, you know, who built it, what they built it out of, you know, was it done as a municipal project, or was it done by one specific group or company? How did it get left to lay in ruin? What are they going to do with it? Are they just going to leave it? Are there plans to restore it at some point? So I could definitely see a lot of interesting stuff around it, and it sounds like it is definitely, ruined. It sounds like it's not fully even upright entirely anymore.
I think no one knows how to restore it, and it could be that it was built by ancient aliens.
I would imagine it would have been, if the new lighthouse was something established when the synod and its influence came to the area, then the old lighthouse was whoever was there before then, whether it was done for, if it was more of a businessy sort of area, or if it was just like a big fishing town or whatever. I mean, lighthouse is important regardless, so you can see what the hell's going on. But then the other idea that comes up is maybe there was something about it the synod didn't like. Maybe it offended the Broggains or Nodens or whatever in some way, and they decided to manually tear it down or destroy or leave it to become ruined, possibly facilitating it, because they wanted to make this new lighthouse and do it in their style, and have it operate in a way, because we don't know like what kind of light was it. Was it a conventional like oil burning sort of thing, or was it maybe something completely different, like the was it like an iron rod and a copper rod in electrolyte solution makes the like the old Baghdad battery or whatever. It's an old form of light source. Maybe it did. Maybe that's what they used. That seems like something that would come more from Anacotha. Just talking about like kind of the regions and cultures, and I don't want to use the word tropes, but like associating certain cultures and civilizations with certain technology. That could have been a thing. It could have been sailors from Anacotha that set up in Tide's End, and that's how they set up that light. And when the synod came through, it's like, we don't understand this technology. Oh, the new one's an oil lamp, the last one's a bonfire. Thank you, Ombois.
Well, that's a lot easier to maintain.
Anti-Great One missile silo. Yeah, that's awesome. If only, Betmonty, if only. That's more going the direction if Theleston was just a planet in Star Citizen. Then I could see that being the case. You goofballs.
Could be. Could be. We don't know. We don't know what happened before the Dark Ages.
And that was kind of a funny thought. Be a weird crossover. But anyway, so yeah, we've kind of covered a lot of different stuff here. So that's one other thing I want to talk about is definitely the burger, the mayor person.
Well, go ahead and contrast that with there's the burger and the Navy and the pirates.
There's there's a bunch of things that intersect with the burger's business. There's workings with Marifar, workings with DNI, workings with the coalition of loggers, the guards, the Navy, all the trade going through the area. There's a lot on that person's plate. They, as they were saying, anybody male or female can be elected to that position. It's definitely an elected position. It seems like you have a lot of things you've got to stay on top of, and it's a very demanding thing. And likewise, I would imagine it's something where in a dispute or in something where there's a conflict and it has to be resolved, somebody could potentially bribe their way into getting their favor a lot easier. It's like, here, I'm just going to give you all this stuff. You've got other things on your plate. You've got a bunch of other stuff to deal with. I'll give you this kickback. You hook us up, and everything's good. And I would imagine that it probably does create a lot of wealth disparity, legality issues where the rich definitely take advantage of the poor in that way. But it seems like they have a lot of influence, and they can not just in Tide's End, but everyone who is involved with Tide's End. So that burger's almost got to be somebody that Valor and Crown's Rock are okay with too. Otherwise, I don't know. They might send their people to try to remove that person or try to defame them, discredit them. And that to me seems like a really interesting sort of thing. Is if Crown's Rock and Valor are trying to get the burger of Tide's End deposed, but Marifar and DNI really like this person because they're hooking him up, and so there's this like 3-city multi-corporation conflict going on. And then what would happen with that if the Marifar of Tide's End is in conflict with Marifar from Valor and Skypass? Would they actually break off? Would there be a schism? Would they how would they resolve that? That's really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. I was reading, I read a little bit about the Lewis and Clark expedition, and I was not aware of all the members of that expedition that got lashings for, like, getting into the hooch. This private got into the beer and got 50 lashes for that and all kinds of stuff. One guy fell asleep at the watch and got 100 lashes and then was kicked out of the expedition. So it's like, wow, I
obviously a priority.
Well, don't fall asleep at the watch. That's very important.
Yeah.
I hadn't realized how, because in D&D you just kick the person out. You don't lash them, or we didn't. That didn't hurt me. Yeah, I mean, that kind of has me wondering what kind of guards even D&I might have, or militia D&I might have, that would keep people in line. And what does it mean, especially if for, say, Marifar, where you have to kind of have enough money to get your jackets and all this stuff, which kind of reminds me of the lawyers who it's so important in it's the barristers in Britain who have to pay for their wigs, and that's very important to get your first wig, which just seems absurd from our standards where you don't have to wear a wig, but and the wig that they get doesn't even cover your whole head. It's just a little Trump mop that you put on top of your head.
Yeah.
But for them, it's this, very important thing. And I can imagine that, again, these families in Tide's End, that might be a thing that's a respectable job to have, is to work for DNI or to work for Marifar and gain your jacket and all that stuff.
Now, there was an interesting thing that came up, and it's a little more of a Valor sort of thing, but it's the idea that there was a little talk of different currency, and I don't know that Tide's End necessarily has its own currency. It sounds like they just use sovereigns. Sovereigns are the currency basically backed by the synod. It's the Bragains and Odins and the churches that back the sovereign as a currency. But Valor, they have their own currency. It's a little bit less universally trusted, but I would imagine a lot of business between Tide's End and Crown's Rock and Valor, those coins end up getting involved. And it's an interesting sort of thing that while it might not be necessarily as trusted, it might actually end up being a more valid or reliable currency. Tide's End does use sovereigns, but the idea that Valor actually controls all of the metalwork in their area. If you're going to be a metallurgist or a jeweler or a mentor, or even an appraiser, it sounds like you would need to get the proper training and the proper accommodations from the city of Valor to actually be allowed to set up shop doing that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's much more heavily regulated in Baylor.
But at the same time, there's always the idea that, well, we're starting to run out of access to a certain material, so water it down with a little zinc or something. We're officially telling you guys to do that, just don't tell anybody else we're doing that. And that might devalue. I don't think that Valor would do that, though. But I would imagine there has to be some amount of, I don't even know if it's an exchange rate sort of thing, or if you just accumulate the Valor currency, knowing relatively what the value is, and then at some point, you do some dealing with Marifar. They've got a ship that's going out to Valor, and you give the coins, and they give you the relative value of sovereigns on that ship going back to Valor with all their V-shaped tokens or whatever.
The notes that I have written down was that Valor currency was actually more valued because it's so heavily regulated, and that the coins might actually be more trusted to be what they say they are because of the heavy regulation.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The whole thing's probably a crapshoot. Well, it's like all talk. So who knows?
And then the other thing is still like, how easy is it to gain access to the minting tools to basically do your own counterfeiting, and will players actually be able to control metal as a metallurgist so much that they can get something that maybe it's not quite as soft as gold, but it's got the weight and it's got the volume, and it does kind of scratch when you scratch at it. It does kind of bend a little, maybe just not as much as gold. So it's close enough, and would be able to pass by a lot of people. Or that it's I would imagine you're going to get two of the three. You'll probably get between the weight, the volume, and the malleability, a metallurgist would probably be able to hit two of those dead on, and then the third one would be a little shaky. I think of the I can't remember whose story it was about the gold crown that they put in a bath of water with and then measured that with just a pure block of gold of that same weight, and determined, well, hell, this crown's got some fake metal and it's not pure gold because the volume's different than a chunk of gold of the same weight. And I think that's almost like getting into the more advanced, like counterfeit and fraud protection sort of stuff. But it seems like that would definitely come up. I would imagine DNI and Marifar are very, very much on top of like making sure that the money they're getting from their larger contracts, not so much like a trader that's coming in and buy a couple things, you're never going to see them again, but somebody that like is dealing in tens of thousands of coins per year, that you're going to definitely check their stuff and make sure that they're not sneaking in some fakes along the way, or that they haven't had fakes snuck to them along the way, and that they're distributing false currency. Because it's such a big business in Commerce Town, I imagine money's a big deal.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder in what way the coins and having coins, and again with the old families and stuff. I wonder how certain people feel about particular coins and money collecting, coin collecting and things like that. Paul, how are your notes looking? We're coming up on the hour mark. I'm wondering if we've been hitting what you have.
I've got a couple of things that I want to mention before we close. One of them, with regard to Tide's End, is that early in the fireside chat that we're referencing for this session, referred to lore, and specifically referred to the Kinds as pretty much the first family of Tide's End, and it refers back to a revival story. So if people have not seen it in a while, I recommend checking out The Madness, beneath Cambric Lane. I believe that was a revival story before it got ported to Theleston. I could be wrong, but if it's out there on the blog, you might want to check that out.
Okay, but we can find it at Theleston.com?
I think so.
Okay.
It's a very good story. I know it's out on the Patreon site, and I know that they are revolving stories through Theleston.com in the lore. But I believe it might have actually been the very last blog story that we got before the project shut down. So,
okay.
Okay. I didn't know, Snipe. I wasn't sure. But that's a great story if you can read it. And I thought I'm loving the cross-reference between what we're doing in Theleston and the projects that we're rolling out and how they link back to all the things that we learned and studied about revival and how that came to life for all of us. I mean, that's why we're still here, because it came to life. So I am really, really, really enjoying this cross-reference back to things that we learned in revival and bringing those things back to life. That is just, I love it. I don't know how to say that any better than I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else here. In the fireside chat, Snipe also talked in the early part of the chat about what he was working on. Sounds like there have been some very significant additions to the player's guide in the last several weeks. And this is, 2 weeks ago when he was saying he had added 8 pages already, and that once he was done with the things that he was adding at that time, all that would be left for the player's guide would be related to crafting, combat, and spell casting. There was still obviously stuff that would have to happen beyond that, but he was actually creating the rule sets for the player's guide, and that's huge. I mean, that's something that's available to all of us, and that is a big deal. So I just want to give a shout out to that.
Yeah, he said he was kind of rewriting what happens on death, the actual death itself, madness, and temporal damage. So
yes,
that's really cool to see how because that's a huge bunch of systems that have to change from the Meow, where it's all being, automated, to something that potentially ends an adventure for one part of a group unless they can somehow find their way through Animai's realm and somehow get kicked out buck naked right next to the party who's been carrying their equipment off their corpse the entire time. It's a really crappy consequence for what's supposed to be heroic adventuring with your buddies to die. So I would imagine that's part of why death itself is getting a little bit of an adjustment here. But he's also saying, like, the organizations of cities, groups, guilds, professions, that still needs to be written. Granular bits for storytelling are going to be... There's going to be some granular bits for storytelling, but they're not going to be as much as, like, the richer, detailed source books. They're going to have a lot more of, like, everything about a certain subject. And they were saying that the thing that's really cool is that the players only need the player's guide, the narrators only need the narrator's guide, but the source book they both share. So all of the source books are used by everybody.
Right.
That's some pretty cool stuff.
And I think the last thing here on my list is that, last 2 things are that there has more cool stuff has gone out, and there is another thread out on the Theleston forums about cool stuff, and I'd love to see more participation, more interest, more activity, more speculation. Ombois confirmed that they are linked, but he wouldn't say how. That'll be up to us to figure out or speculate on, and then he'll give us more feedback as we fiddle. So we need to fiddle. And then Gratz to Verdi on his promotion. He's now the public face of Theleston and webmaster, wikimaster, and
community manager,
media manager, stuff.
The face of Theleston.
Right. And I think those are the things on my list, Neuro.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I feel like it's just a very much like, you know, whatever isn't specifically, you know, the lore stuff and the design stuff kind of ends up falling on Verde's plate now. He's kind of the everything guy now. So yeah, it's a fun sort of thing, and you know, look forward to seeing what he does with it.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
So,
and the one other
go
fun
ahead.
thing they're talking about is ebooks. Audio formats are
Yes.
kind of a fun thing with that because there's 5 different file formats that the different ebooks use. But basically, the you know the truck stop B level audio dramas and stuff for all genres. There's one specific company that really dominates that whole infrastructure, and they're thinking about maybe putting some stuff on from Theleston up, so truckers will have some interesting Lovecraftian fantasy horror to listen to as they drive along, or anybody
Yep.
else that buys those sorts of things.
I love it.
So I have a little bit of a tangential rant. It's not Theleston related, but it maybe, hopefully, is DLP Crew, the devs, related. I saw on Twitter last week a tweet from Dave Mark talking about the Hero Song Kickstarter and the AI, and that perked my interest. So I actually took a look at Hero Song, even though I've been avoiding it because, one, I've been avoiding it because I'm not really too interested in
2D graphics.
in snipes, but I'm especially not interested in 2D graphics. And though I hate the graphics of Hero Song, I could not hate them more, and that would normally keep me away. The AI sounds fantastic. The story building sounds fantastic. Check that out. But as I was sharing that with Neuro on Skype, he was saying it would be a lot of fun to play with Ombla, I think, and Snipe. And I think in general it would be really cool. I think that might be a cool multiplayer experience for those of us who love hanging out with the devs. That might be a great multiplayer for everyone. It's just the Kickstarter is just the alpha that you could become a part of as if you do the Kickstarter for $15 starts at the end of October.
Yeah,
That's not
15
too
bucks
much
for
to pay.
alpha
Yeah.
is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm hoping it's as fun to play as it seems. Just the world, the different worlds, and how that's related to the hierarchy of the gods that you select. That could be a lot of fun, I think. So I'm formally suggesting that publicly. And Snipe and Ombwa said that they both did back that, I think. So
Cool.
Yep.
we
I
might
did
have
too.
that opportunity.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks that are looking for the next evolution of online multiplayer games with the world actually being influenced by the players and actions mattering and stuff are interested, because that's a lot of what they're doing. A lot of what was supposed to go in EverQuest Next, but they lost the resources and everything. Dave Mark was the AI guy on that too, and Intrinsic Algorithms is his company, and he's been kind of showing he's got the cutting edge technology like waiting and ready to go, and is finally able to implement it here. So that's something really exciting to me. Oh, and one other interesting thing, they had talked about the idea of every other Sunday doing play tests on
Yes.
this channel with this show run by Skyward Star. They said that about the 15-minute mark of the show, and we'd love to do that. We understand, though, the compromise of not getting too intoxicated the night before, so that way we can actually do that, because I know that sometimes comes up.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be fun. That
Yeah, once
definitely would be-
playtesting is ready for that, that'd be a very cool thing.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep. And who knows? Maybe if it's ready in time for, say, OrcaCon, could actually.
When is that?
I think it's the beginning of January, or maybe it's in late December. Denicia from the SOE community team actually is the founder of it, so pretty cool. Very much props to her. I think this is actually the second year of it, so that'd be pretty sweet. But yeah, I think we're just kind of talking about, no, not OrcCon, OrcaCon, you know, like the whale. Though my friend actually does a lot of stuff at OrcCon too, so if you guys want to hit that up, I can ask her, and we've got to hook up. Either way, there's cons to be had. There's madness to have inflicted upon our characters. That'll be fun. But
Cool.
Anyway, was there any other stuff that you folks wanted to bring up or talk about? Because I think we're about done here. I could talk about Tides End.
We could
for
keep going
hours,
for another
but...
couple hours, yeah. But
Yeah, we
we'll
probably
wrap up
could.
to keep it close to an hour.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will be back in 2 weeks with the next episode. That should be a lot of fun. Whatever it's going to be, it's likely going to be the content of one of the firesides. If not, then between now and then, we'll probably cover 24, 25, and 26, because I'm sure there's going to be tons of stuff to cover in all of those.
Yep.
And should be good. And hopefully we'll have a full roster of 4, but if you folks want to get on the show here, just let us know. We've been having a little more openings recently, so we'd be more than happy to get some more lovely faces on here, or lovely symbols you use because you don't use your webcam. Either one's fine.
Lovely voices. Lovely voices.
That one.
Don't actually have a cam on this one. What can I say?
That's fine. All right. Till next time. See y'all later.